Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of League Unlocked. My name's Eric, flying a little bit high solo on today's episode of Board the Millennium Falcon. Got to hit the catchphrase for a weekend that had surprises, champions crowned, MSI qualification on the line, and some results in insane fashion that were basically written in stone or could have easily been predicted. And perhaps one of those would be G2 Esports capturing yet another LEC title. Of course, this one was in full dramatic fashion as we had the KC versus G2 rematch, rivalry renewed, Blue Wall crashing against the Samurai. We had a very back and forth series with KC eventually taking match point in game 3, and then a back-to-back Skewmont performance for the absolute ages. This guy has proven that he is maybe not just the best jungler, but I'm going to maybe even say the best player in Europe right now, rocking a 24-0 death, 12 assist performance across games 4 and 5, which of course G2 ultimately end up winning. I don't think ever in the history of watching competitive League of Legends, and I've been doing that for over a decade, have I seen a guy pick up like 100% of their kills. He had 7-0-0 score lines to start back-to-back games in the Pantheon one and then the Nasus one, which, Nasus jungle has been a fun one, but it looks completely busted now. We saw the Griffin game a couple of weeks ago for FlyQuest, and now this one for Skewmont was absolutely insane. And we did have a very spicy game 5. It wasn't just the Nasus pick. I mean, the gameplay wasn't so spicy, but, the Kled versus Nidalee top lane matchup, Kana had absolutely zero impact on that one, by the way. But the whole top side of the map was a fun time. But KC were absolutely not on the level of G2 in that game 5, which begs the question is this good or bad for Europe heading towards yet another international competition? We know now KC and G2 are going to be joining, but it's just G2 winning again. Are they a one-team region? Well, we've actually been talking about this upper half of Europe being incredibly contested. There were multiple teams you were talking about throughout this season. Vitality as the top seed in the regular season. MKOI, who we'll touch on in a minute, looking elite at times. KC looked dominant. We're almost undefeated. And here we are talking about G2 as the champions yet again. And truthfully, when you saw Caps kind of dancing around, surviving early on in this series on the Ahri, you knew it's claps on the day. Even if he has a few whoopsie moments on an Aurora, it just felt like the mojo was there for the G2 fellas. Similarly, when you see a Broken Blade Galio sighting, it just feels like it's going to be a little bit different. But yes, this was the Skewmont show in game 4 and 5. But is it bad for EU? I think it's actually fine, because even though they can't get it done against G2, the rest of these squads, the top 3 are still at a very high level in Europe right now. They can't push past that boundary, but do feel like both G2 and KC can absolutely show up on this year's international events at MSI. I think they can both make some noise. So even though G2 are at the top of the mountain, still it's the rest of the region that is rising up to meet them. And I'm excited to see what Karmine Corp can do and showcase, even though they didn't get it done against G2. It was a very contested series. Movistar KOI, on the other hand, obviously KC had to beat them to get there, and they beat them. I think we expected a little more out of this series. It's a 3-0 for KC, and it was kind of just a team gap across the board. And obviously and often we saw the emphasis for KC was to shut down Jojopian, whether it was all-inning on finding these Akali flanks, because we've seen this guy put up some montages on that pick. KC were locked in to make sure they denied him any angles. They were camping him early and often in all of the early games, really, throughout this series. And without Jojo able to have much of an impact in this set, well, you're looking at a 3-0. So disappointing end for Movistar KOI, as we were kind of, the competitive game they had against G2. And again, that's a double down reason why it's okay. It's not bad for Europe that G2 is winning again, because you saw both KOI and KC pushing them to the absolute brink. If G2 was sitting here 3-0ing everybody to win yet again, yes, I would be worried about Europe. I would be worried about falling into the vortex of a one-team region kind of scenario, but that's not the case. And even though MKOI has a bit of a dud on the day, I would, nobody in their right mind would be saying this was the MKOI we've seen for the majority of the year performing on the Rift. And you could argue that the losses that KC had against G2 were equally egregious, because they did kind of get slapped in the 3 games, but they at least picked up 2, and there was pushback. So I'm feeling okay about KC, feeling good about G2, and really, again, this is just Skewmont. Like, it's insane that this team went from Jankos, the GOAT jungler, to Yike, who had this resurgent, was in contention for best jungler in EU, and then they replace him. It's question marks, and Skewmont has had an even better start to his career on G2 than Yike did, and that was already like, how are you even in the conversation of what Jankos was doing for this squad? So G2 absolutely blessed with junglers as of late. The other side note for these finals was it felt so sad to see this be in the LEC arena after the roadshow drama we were getting. Why is week 7 and 8 of the regular season more hype than the entire spring playoffs? Well, that is a solution for the heads at the LEC Esports for Europe to figure out for maybe not summer. I think there is a finals actually somewhere in summer, as it should be, at least for one event, but something to look at. Either more road shows or figure out something to make the playoffs a little bit special as we head into 2027 for the LEC. But really, their answer is to just make the whole thing remote. So enjoy the summer finals when they're actually at some type of a venue. Big matchups in the LEC as well. Our first team going off to MSI, and unfortunately, we bid farewell. The kids are, in fact, not all right, as Team Liquid eliminate FlyQuest in 4 games. And it was really, game 3 was the turning point in this one. It could have gone either way. There was a team fight where the Vayne top for Gakos gets, listen, he's very fed. He should maybe be able to take over a game, but there's one big team fight around Dragon where not once, not twice, like 3 different times, FlyQuest, I think it's both Griffin and Gakos, stepping on Caitlyn traps. FlyQuest gets completely dumpstered by the Caitlyn traps, as the Vayne looks like he's going to clean up this fight and ready to 3-tap Yawn to take down his Caitlyn. He steps on a trap. They fall behind, end up losing that fight, and ultimately the game before they lose game 4. But really, back-to-back game 3 and 4, Quid was an absolute menace. First on the Akali, drawing so much attention, putting up the performance that we thought maybe JoJo would do on that pick against KC. But Mark and I have both said, and I think a lot of people have been screaming this from the top of their lungs, there's no way Team Liquid are making a deep playoff run, contending for the title in this split, unless we get better performances out of Quid. And back-to-back, the Akali game and then Victor in game 4, even though it didn't result in pop-off highlight plays. He was zoning Masu on the Kog'Maw, who was the only real source of damage for FlyQuest, and just completely taking over these team fights. His damage numbers were astronomical in that 4th game. So Team Liquid come away with the series win, in large part because we finally get to see an MVP level out of Quid in that mid lane, and opposite Quad, who was the better QU mid laner throughout the majority of the split. So finally, we get that level out of Quid, and because of that, it's Team Liquid heading on. So it's sad to see the end of the run for FlyQuest. I really felt like this is a squad that might push and go all the way to MSI with the youngins, but I think there's still an angle where this can be a Worlds caliber team. There was so much growth that we saw in Split 2 here compared to Split 1, and they should still be riding high with confidence, pushing forward, that they are right there at the level of these other top 3 squads in the LCS. So I'm still excited to see the growth from them, and they still might even be, top 3, more so than top 4 in terms of power level squads from the LCS. Winner side of the matchup was that Cloud9 versus Lion Gaming, and finally the undefeated reign comes up short, ends for Cloud9 to the surprise of probably absolutely nobody, because they looked absolutely discombobulated at times in this series, as Lion were kind of running laps, circles, dancing around them in terms of just what trades they were doing objective wise. In the side lane, they completely outplayed the minion wave management, and Cloud9 how's this team 8-0? Like, it's just a bizarre split for them, because they did not look like the same level as Lion on the day. Again, since Castle has come to the lineup, Dokla has, not ceded his spot at all, and has been much better, in fact, and so good that he hasn't been able to be subbed out. I still think Castle's going to be, brought to MSI, as of course now Lion are waiting in finals and have qualified for that midseason invitational, but still see what this 6-man roster looks like. But the showstopper and stealer of the matchup was absolutely Berserker, fresh off of being named the first team All-Pro AD carry, and he showed why, especially in this Misfortune game. Some of the most disgusting ultis that I've seen probably all year, and single-handedly stopped the comeback from Cloud9 with his absolutely nutty quadra kill that he ended up getting to. So often guys pop the Misfortune ulti way too early, and it hits nobody, or one person flashes away, but he held onto it for so long in so many of these fights before it became the perfect angle. And we saw the difference between a hyper-aggressive AD carry and the playstyle that Zven has kind of backed into. How many team fights did we see him too scared to move past some of these tanks, and he's just auto-attacking, wailing away on the tank, and by the time he gets him to 40% health, the team fight's over, or it's him versus 4 other people. If you look at Masu in the LCS, any LPL or LCK AD carry, it's the aggression where you're ignoring that tank and going into the backline to take down the key carries, and we never really saw that confidence out of Cloud9, out of Zven, and we absolutely did see that out of Berserker throughout this entire series. And in that final game especially, even in the draft, you could say, okay, big win for Lion, because they dropped this flex Sejuani, Jace, and for all these champions like Jace, like Aatrox and Bessa that have, flex pick potential, we haven't seen it utilized enough by teams. But doing it with the Sejuani and the Jace, obviously Sejuani is a pick that Inspired so often falls back to as either a pocket pick, B tier champion. So really styled on Cloud9 in that one, as he went for the Jace in the jungle, and Dokla plays the Sejuani top, and piloted to near perfection out of Lion Gaming. So they're off to MSI. Now we're going to get Team Liquid and Cloud9 in that losers final for a chance of a rematch against Lion if you are Cloud9. And probably now Team Liquid would be the favorites in that one, because Cloud9 did not look close to Lion, and Team Liquid seemed to be revving up as a team full of veterans like they are. You kind of anticipate or expect, and we've got that first team All-Pro Jose Diodo coming in that jungle spot, which I'm sure Inspired is absolutely livid about. I'm just kidding, he doesn't care at all, I'm sure. But Cloud9, I feel like if this was a FlyQuest Cloud9 matchup instead of Team Liquid, I'd be favoring FlyQuest, no question. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be favoring Team Liquid in that matchup. And Cloud9, I don't want to write them off yet, but the writing's on the wall. An 8-0 run ending in not qualifying for an international event, it just seems inevitable at this point, and I feel bad for all the Cloud9 fans out there if they have to suffer through that yet again. I don't feel as bad for Cloud9 fans as I do for D+ Kia fans, and even KT Rolster for going across this absolutely insane roller coaster that was the weekend, because you fall down 2-0 to D+, and pretty dominant fashion. They kind of stomped the first 2 games, and that's when I was very worried for them, as you get it contested. Game 3 back, KT pushes in. Okay, we're in game 4, and oh look, it's a 10K. 10 1,000 gold lead plus Infernal Soul for D plus Kia, and somehow, some way, you're still not feeling confident. All it takes is Shiwu. He gets caught out once, and a 4v5 DK. I don't know if you call it forcing, desperation when they're down a single kill, and this is just kind of the state of the game in this modern League of Legends landscape, where a 10k gold lead, but all of a sudden it's one single 4v5 because death timers are so long and there's so much power struggle this late in the game, and a 10k gold lead evaporates like within 1.5 team fights. They lose the Elder Dragon and get a couple of kills. D plus then takes one more team fight, and it's an ace, and it's gone. KT has the gold lead by the time they're pushing against the Nexus, and looks absolutely cooked for D plus, and somehow they come back into the next game and reset themselves mentally. They somehow get a 5k gold lead, and you're again feeling good. Well, maybe not feeling good, you're feeling antsy if you're a DK fan. And then Cuz comes in with a big Elder Dragon Smite steal, and it's another blown lead. It's another, when the pressure is on, the lights are the brightest, D plus flounders. They fall apart to ultimately get reversed swept in maybe one of the more painful series in a long storied history of painful series losses for D plus Kia, Showmaker, and the lads. They are eliminated from the road to MSI. KT survives in game 5 to move on against Gen G. It was a masterclass Cuz performance on the Poppy in this series, and objective control. He was outsmiting Lucid basically from game 1 to game 5. So a resurgent comeback from him, and he has been the main guy you've been highlighting during the slight ebbs and flows, especially those valleys for KT in the regular season. So nice to see him have a bounce back performance, and KT obviously going to be a little bit harder to bounce back against Gen G, but we'll see if they can make some noise, make an upset like they have done before against Chovy and the boys. Big matchups in the LCK or LPL. Also, you have this incredible losers bracket run continuing for Bilibili Gaming. They have the marquee matchup against JDG, who they have absolutely had the number of for the entirety of 2026, and this series was no different. Yeah, JDG got a game, great, congrats, but we got to see the absolute chefery out of On. Mr. Anivia support, no, he says, let me show you the Skarner support in the bot lane, and even though he died a lot early, the impact that this guy had on the map, and you think about the mobility that Skarner has, and a roaming support, it actually makes sense. It's not like Skarner does a lot of damage. He's just a mega CC bot, and On piloted it perfectly. Completely won a couple of the lanes and dominated the game. Again, even when he was dying, he was winning the lanes for his teammates, and Viper, even though he was 1v2 a lot, it was absolutely fine. So BLG complete the destruction of JDG, and boy, did they ride that momentum even further into their matchup today against Anyone's Legend, where this, I mean, at least JDG pushed back and it was a contested series. AL just got completely smashed. This was not close, and even though they had avenues, they had early games where they had Viper and On sitting at level 1 when everyone else was level 3, didn't even get to play the game, and somehow that same game results in Viper getting a quadra kill on Senna to secure it. So just a team gap, much like the MKOI KC series, just across the board. The team fighting was much better for BLG. Felt like they had a little bit of plot armor, is how egregious some of these fight wins were for Bilibili, and not a good day for AL. And we got to see another Mel sighting for Knight in game 3, which was just absolutely disgusting. I think he had 15 kills in that game, and BLG one series away now from going to MSI, which, assuming they can complete the job, complete the losers bracket run, Knight might be, like, if you were to do a ranking, and I'm sure we will, ahead of MSI, the guy to watch, the best player in the world heading into that event. I would easily throw that title on Knight right now. We'll see how the rest of the playoffs go in the LPL, but that is definitely the way we are trending, and it's going to be a revenge opportunity for BLG in that losers bracket final, as they will be matching up against World Elite. The Cinderella story got a bit of a reality check in their head-to-head against Top Esports. A tight back and forth game one that Top Esports ends up coming away with, and then there was nothing really back and forth about it after that, as TES Cream has a great performance, and Jackie Love absolutely outclassing that bot lane alongside Feng Yue. I know Monkey's been the guy that everyone's hyping up for World Elite, and I mean, he was good, but Tien had a playoff performance that made it look like the regular season, and with that, Top Esports are headed to MSI. I know, much to a collective sigh for a lot of LPL squads, but Top Esports qualifying for MSI by beating JDG and World Elite. I mean, that's not exactly world-beating confidence that you're going to be getting out of them, assuming it's not another colossal upset with World Elite taking down BLG again. I'm expecting a swift 3-0 revenge out of BLG. You need at least a competitive series for Top Esports in the finals, or they're winning the whole thing to feel a little bit better about them heading to MSI, especially with, of course, their international resume, which does not exactly scream confidence. So we need a solid showing from them out of finals, whoever that matchup is. If it's World Elite, you best have another swift 3-0 in the holster for TES, and if it's against BLG, you don't have to beat them, but you have to actually contest them and make them sweat and make On pull out a crazy support pick to need to clinch the series. But either way, LPL not screaming confidence heading towards the midseason invitational. I think this is an opportunity for the West to make a statement and compete against everybody that is not the LCK, because as the big three heavy hitters start hitting the LCK, I think it's going to quickly be talking about who's playing for second, third, and fourth at this year's mid-season invitational. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you absolutely gorgeous individuals for hanging out, supporting, and commenting as always. And you best believe we'll catch you on that flippity flip.